Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio. Brought to you by OnPay, Atlanta's new standard in payroll. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Atlanta Business Radio, and this is going to be a good one. But before we get started, it's important to recognize our sponsor, OnPay. Without them, we couldn't be sharing these important stories. Today on Atlanta Business Radio, we have Allyson Eman with Venture Atlanta Coalition. Welcome, Allyson.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to get caught up with you. For the folks who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about Venture Atlanta?
Sure. Venture Atlanta's now one of the largest tech conferences on the East Coast, becoming one of the biggest in the country, and just had our 16th conference a few weeks ago.
So over the years, how have you seen the event change?
So it really started 16 years ago as a very local Georgia conference. And I probably should have said this, that the goal of the conference is to connect tech companies to capital. So the goal was to bring in outside capital because we really didn't have a lot here. And over the years, obviously, there's been a lot of co-working spaces and incubators and exits, people like David Cummings and things like that with the Tech Village. So more and more has been happening in Atlanta, and more local funding is here. But in that time, we also have expanded across the Southeast. So we're really supporting companies as far west as Texas, north as Maryland, DC, and south, down to Miami. So we're really covering the entire Southeast and supporting those companies.
Now, you've been involved in this for a while now. How have you seen the kind of investor mentality change? I know your background's in real estate, and at one point Atlanta was very kind of developer real estate focused, and that's where a lot of the investors invested. Are you seeing a change in making Atlanta and the Southeast more kind of open to investing as angel investors or even VCs or private equity in technology? Has the investing?
Oh yeah, for sure. And just to be clear, my background was not in real estate. I worked in marketing for a mortgage company. So, but definitely did work in the mortgage and real estate and financial services industry. But yeah, I totally agree with you that it definitely used to be all about real estate. I think, unfortunately, Lee, that there's still a lot of hesitancy in angel investors, putting money into tech. They are doing it, but, on the VC side, there's been a ton. I mean, our companies have raised close to $8 billion over the 16 years that I've run Venture Atlanta. I was actually hired to start it 16 years ago. So I've been with the organization the entire time.
So are you seeing the people that are kind of dipping their toe in investing in startups and in technology, are they just folks who have kind of graduated and had an exit and they're just staying here and they want to, kind of pay it forward or just kind of invest in that? They're more comfortable investing in that as opposed to maybe the previous type of investor that, they liked land and they like to see this thing with their eyes and watch it be built.
No, that's you're exactly right what you said. So you look at folks like, Tom Noonan, and Chris Klaus, who sold, ISS to IBM, and Tom Noonan has put money into multiple companies and started the Tech Operators Fund, along with several of his colleagues, Saeed Mohammadian and Glenn McGonigal and Dave Gould. So those were all entrepreneurs that had a big exit and immediately were paying it forward. David Cummings, same thing. I mean, he right away, wanted to start the Tech Village, and he's done incredible things with Tech Village and Atlanta Ventures. And then, now you've got your newer entrepreneurs like Kyle Porter, who had his exit, and Mark Gorlin with Rody and Cabbage, Catherine Petrella and Rob Frowan. So there's been some great exits, and those companies are absolutely putting their money back into tech. And that's really what we've needed the whole time. In Silicon Valley, it was always, here's a big exit, and that company, spins out a new venture fund. And we really didn't have that. And we're still a little, obviously far behind where Silicon Valley is, but we do have a lot more serial entrepreneurs that are having some nice exits and putting their money back into Atlanta or the Southeast.
Now, as Venture Atlanta has expanded, like you mentioned, from Texas to Miami, are you seeing Atlanta kind of still as the hub of this, or we're just another player amongst many players just spread out throughout the South?
No, we're definitely still the hub. We have no intention of changing the name of the conference or making it Venture Southeast or anything like that. All eyes will continue to be on bringing everyone to Atlanta, hopefully seeing growth in Atlanta, more economic development in Atlanta, looking at these companies perhaps opening second offices or seeing how we can support. But, it's worked really well having the conference focus on companies across the Southeast, because it really makes the investors very likely to want to come to the conference. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we had over 450 investors here, and you just don't see any other event on the East Coast that has that many investors there, and, which made it very fruitful for the entrepreneurs to meet with them.
Now, what do you see, since you are now kind of spreading around the region, what makes Atlanta different and special compared to the other markets?
So my biggest thing I will continue to say about Atlanta is the collaboration. Our community is fantastic. So I helped lead this InnovATL movement or issue that we had this year. So it was basically 3 weeks of incredible events and happenings and community gatherings, kind of creating our own South by Southwest here in Atlanta. And the community, I mean, a few of us called, Jennifer Singh and the Metro Atlanta Chamber, we called a meeting of community partners in February, and 70 people showed up and were like, okay, raising their hand of, how can I help? And, this group created something incredible over the last couple of weeks. And there's been so many people coming to town and so many eyes on Atlanta. And I just think that a lot of other markets couldn't pull that off. You think about Texas and Florida, and they're so spread out, that we, even though Atlanta is, in the center, we could still pull in someone from Macon or Augusta or Columbus, or, places like that. And everyone could still work together. I mean, we had all the universities, we had UGA and Georgia State and Kennesaw and Georgia Tech, on this initiative as well. So I just think collaboration and communities are secret sauce.
So talk a little more about InnovATL. That event, is the vision to be kind of like a South by Southwest, because we are kind of blessed with having music and film as well as technology here in this market.
Yeah. So, what happened over the last couple of years as Venture Atlanta kind of served as the hub or the center of what we were calling Atlanta Innovation Week. And ironically, if you look around the country, New York, San Francisco, Charlotte, Denver, I mean, everyone's kind of, it's kind of the new thing. Everyone has their Innovation Week, and we wanted to do something a little bit differently. And we did want to think about what could we do to showcase, what we have great in art, in music, in our, universities, in technology. So the A3C hip hop festival was going on. We had the Atlanta Startup Awards. Georgia Tech did a conference, for the first time. There was the Atlanta Design Festival. There's, all sorts of things going on. And, really we want this to be a time on the calendar, and it's, probably always going to be around Venture Atlanta in October. And that's kind of the goal, that people will continue to, think about being in Atlanta in the fall.
And then just kind of piggyback on each other's momentum and just have a lot of different things happening simultaneously.
Yeah, there was. I mean, around Venture Atlanta, I mean, the Tuesday that we kicked off, it was insane. I mean, there was probably 20, 30, happy hours going on all over the place, and after parties, and people were like, oh my God, I've gotten invites to so many different things. And, people were also piggybacking off of us. I mean, there was groups from different parts of the country that all of a sudden I was like, wow, what's that group? And, they were doing different events really to pull on, the people that we had brought into town. So, we want to create something exciting. And again, I think we'll learn from the things that we did well this year and things that we didn't. I mean, we also worked with the city of Atlanta, Obviously, Mayor Dickens is incredibly supportive. The Metro Atlanta Chamber and, TAG, the Technology Association of Georgia. We worked with ATDC. We worked with Tech Village, so all these different groups, work together to drive this forward.
Now, speaking specifically about Venture Atlanta, can you kind of recap the conference, some of the highs?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we had over 1,500 people there, which was the largest audience we've ever had at the Woodruff Arts Center. The demand was so highly that we had a 200 plus person waiting list of people that we could not let in. So that was a little bit crazy. We had over 450 investors from funds across the country. We had 83 companies that were participating in the conference that had applied to pitch. We had close to 600 companies that applied to pitch. And this year we did things a little bit differently. We actually had a group of funds that came together, BIP Ventures, Florida Funders, Knoll Ventures, and Catalyst by Wellstar, that came together and put together a syndicate investment for one true seed stage company. So, a super early company. And it was a $500,000 investment. And I'm so excited to see Margot Jordan with Enrichly won that investment. And then we also had companies that kind of became best of our early stage category or best of our growth stage category. And our growth stage was Cloud Range out of Nashville, and our early stage was Rainforest, here in Atlanta. And those companies actually got on stage they were voted by the audience, and, taken into consideration by investors and judges. And they were actually kind of grilled on by some of the top funds in the country on, from NEA and Excel and Insight Partners and Open Opportunity Fund and Invesco and Cox Enterprises and things like that. So they were able to get in front of, partner level funds and get questions asked to them. And the judges ultimately picked, quote, the winner. Now, these winners didn't get cash prizes, but they just get bragging rights. And, they also got an incredible opportunity to be in front of those funds. We also sprinkle in there, Robert Herkovic from Shark Tank was one of our keynote speakers, and he was fantastic. And we do a great cocktail party and great investor dinners and happy hours and things like that. So it's truly become a pretty substantial event that is now 3 full days. We actually closed it this year with Invesco, who's our title sponsor, hosting a female founders dinner. And we had 180 women RSVP for a female founders dinner. And it was just a great opportunity for women to get together and network and support each other and help each other. And that's something we've been doing a couple times a year now too. So there's just so much great stuff going on.
Now, what are some of the things that somebody who'd like to maybe get to pitch in 2024, what should they be doing right now?
They should be really thinking about how to package themselves up, how to really talk about why their technology is different. Why is it needed? What's the competition looking like out there? Why is their team the right team to build it? Lee, unfortunately, sometimes people just don't present themselves, great, that, we'll have to dig into their application. And, luckily our committee is very significant and very large. And a lot of times the companies are actually recruited by the committee. So someone will be able to step up and say, hey, I know this committee there, this company, they actually do this, or, they should have really put this. So, you've got to put your best foot forward and make sure that we're going to look at your application and go, that is a company we have to have. It has become extremely difficult, obviously, to get on our stage where, we're accepting, 15% of the companies that apply. So it's kind of like getting into, Harvard or college or whatever. So, okay, maybe not Harvard. That might be stretching it a little bit too much. But anyway, it's definitely getting harder and harder to get in. And we want the cream of the crop. And I will tell you that investors this year, they were very impressed with the companies that we had on stage. Our companies are legit, growing companies that, some of our growth stage companies were, raising $25 or $50 million, so those funds that used to come to Venture Atlanta aching to be able to write a $5 or $10 million check. Now we have 20 or 30 of those companies, but we've grown over the years, like our companies have.
Now, you mentioned a little bit ago about the Women Founders Dinner. Can you talk a little bit about how Atlanta's doing when it comes to women and minority founders? Are you seeing an improvement in that space?
We're making improvements. We got a long way to go, though. So Goody Nation, run by Joey Womack, who's an amazing leader in town, who's actually going to be our chairman for Venture Atlanta next year. He's served on our board for the last 3 years. And, Joey he's such a trailblazer in supporting, minority founders. And, we actually started a couple of years ago a movement called Creating Momentum within Venture Atlanta to truly support, minority founders and female founders. We actually work with Christy Brown has been, integral, leading something that we've called our Female First Pitch Friday, where basically we're giving women an opportunity to get in front of a small group. To feel comfortable. It's probably 20 people and do their pitch. And we did this for 5 months, starting I think it started in April. And then we picked 3 of those companies, actually got an automatic slot to be on our showcase at Venture Atlanta. So, it was kind of an automatic step in for, some women. We definitely set high goals to ensure that our stage is diverse. We look at our speakers, we look at our board, we look at everything to make sure that we're reflecting things in the proper way, and we realized years ago that we weren't. There was a time where, our speakers were too many white men and our board was too many white men. And, we had to be better. We had to do a better job. Women and minorities are still getting less than 2% of venture capital money, and it's not good and it's not enough. And, we all need to do more to help that. So, I'm super passionate about that. And again, I've worked, I'm on the board of Startup Atlanta, and, I know Joey will really give us some interesting things. So this year we actually held the Intentionally Good Summit that Goody Nation ran within Venture Atlanta. So it was actually at a different room within the Woodruff Arts Center, but all the attendees for the Intentionally Good Summit, and there was 200 people invited to that, they all got full access to Venture Atlanta as well. And it really gave a lot of people an opportunity to be at Venture Atlanta that maybe would normally be there, or they may not think it was for them. And that's what I loved, is that people were like, God, this is great. Like that, there are people of all shapes and colors and sizes and, everything at this conference, and people felt comfortable.
Yeah, it still boggles the mind that today that people are kind of tone deaf, and that when you go to some of these folks' websites and you look at their board of directors and everybody looks the same, and nobody there, has the self-awareness to say, hey, maybe this isn't a good thing.
Right. Exactly. It's crazy. And like I said, I would love to know that, Venture Atlanta made a difference. Again, the winner of the investment was, an African-American woman, and she rocked the stage and she earned it. She was fantastic. And, of everything that, again, like the audience was looking at these companies. We did a top 4, and 3 of the 4 that pitched in the finalists were women, and they were incredible, and again, of our 3 winners in our 3 categories, 2 of the 3 were women. And, obviously I loved that. Being a female CEO. So, but, it's still tough. There's also still not a lot of women in VC, so I think this year we actually had, a Women in Capital breakfast, just something. We've actually had an event, and had a breakfast for several years that several women led. But this year we had like 100 women at that breakfast. So we're trying to show that there's different, opportunities for women to be at Venture Atlanta, to be engaged, to see things, for them. Again, this Female Founders Dinner, we didn't even openly market it. We kind of had a select list of people that we were looking at, because we knew we only had 135 slots that we could fill, but I mean, we probably could have had 300 women there. So, I think we just need to continue to do better.
Well, if somebody wants to learn more about Startup Atlanta, Venture Atlanta, or any of the other places that you're involved, where should they go? Is there a central place, or is it they got to go to each one of those places individually?
Yeah, they got to go to each one. So ventureatlanta.org. And I don't Startup Atlanta. I don't know if it's .org or .com. But you can find Startup Atlanta easily online. There's actually some great resources. We do an ecosystem guide that as someone new to Atlanta can really give you a great landscape of everything going on, what funds are around, what incubators, what, co-working spaces, anything like that. So there's definitely some incredible resources there as well. But Venture Atlanta, we're kind of in our quiet time, but big thing to note is that we do have our date for 2024, which we usually don't have this far in advance, but it's October 8th and 9th back at the Woodruff Arts Center. And we're going to take sponsors in November, and we'll open our applications in April. So.
Good stuff. Well, Allyson, thank you so much for sharing your story today. You're doing important work, and we appreciate you.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks for having me.
All right, this is Lee Cantor. We'll see you all next time on Atlanta Business Radio.